Welcome to Daggers, the show where my friends come on and tell me how dumb I am. This is a new show from Hardwood Paroxysm. I'm launching a bunch of new shows on the new YouTube channel. We're going to try a bunch of different concepts out and see what works and what doesn't. Having great conversations with the people that I respect the most, and in this instance, Kirk. And we're going to talk about all sorts of things to break down all sorts of issues where I have a tendency, some call it trolling. I consider it antagonism, very subtle difference. And when I make people mad, I like the opportunity to talk about them in forums that aren't Twitter because it gets so bad so quickly. And so instead, I'm opening up this new series of Daggers where my friends are going to come at me with daggers, starting with the Dallas Mavericks. Last week, I dropped a tweet that was I want to note, it was in reply. In a reply. Not a quote tweet, not an open challenge. Just a reply in a conversation that I'd rather face the Miami or the 2024 Dallas Mavericks in the finals than the 2023 Miami Heat. And that sparked some spirited discussion from the Dallas Mavericks fan community. So to talk about that and why I feel the Mavericks were a fluke and why maybe they weren't, plus why I think this team is so good, I have the two absolute best Mavericks podcasters in the land. I have Nick Angstadt from Locked On Mavericks. You find him on Locked On NBA. He is phenomenal. His show production is so good. He is the leader of Locked On NBA. I've learned a ton from Nick. He's absolutely phenomenal. He's a wonderful human being. Nick, thanks for coming on.
You're not going to butter me up, Matt Moore. I know this game.
The king of Mavs Moneyball and the host of Pod Maverick, a man that has irked everyone inside the Dallas Mavericks organization because he does not pull punches and he does not restrict things. I've got Kirk Henderson at Kirk Serious Face on Twitter. Kirk, thanks for coming on.
Sure thing. And you're right about Nick's show production. I sometimes watch it and go, you know what? I can't do that. So I'm not going to try.
It's like, no. I'm just gonna do the thing. All right. So here's the idea. The idea is pretty centrally this, okay? What we have to kind of start with is this question, because I think it's a really interesting one. Nick, and I want your thought on this first. Is the team that wins a 7-game series in the NBA always the better team?
Yes. What's the point of playing the games? Unless it's the 2019 Toronto Raptors and they beat the Warriors when Clay and KD are down. You can make a case then when they're missing players. But if at mostly full strength, the two teams play each other 7 times or about 7 times, I think that at least for the most part gives us the better team.
Okay, Kirk, your thoughts on this?
I mean, I certainly think so because we grew up with best of 5 series and we used to see a lot more variance. In this sort of situation over the long haul, you might win 1 series, but winning 2 or even 3, it just, you run into walls. I mean, we've seen one non-top 3 seed win the NBA finals in the past 50 years. Like it doesn't happen.
True. Okay. So I disagree. The reason I disagree, and let's start with this. Nick, were the 2007 Warriors, and I understand this is tough for you because you were 12. With the 2007 Warriors, were they better than the 2007 Dallas Mavericks?
Good question.
I think they were. They played a better series and they beat them. And they
okay. Played a better series is different from being better, right? Because you can be
then you're
better
better
in a given moment.
You beat them. You're better.
Okay. All right. You're sticking with that, Kirk.
I am. Yeah.
It pains me to say it, and I'm going to look up the Mavericks point differential that year.
Pretty good.
It was pretty good, and they went on. That was the year they started out 0-4, went 52-4, and then stumbled and bumbled down the stretch a little bit. I think that in hindsight they were a little bit of a one-trick pony, and that just really caught up with them.
Kareem.
It's more of the sense that they didn't have another gear to get to. You know, like I think there's a couple of teams currently in the NBA that I wonder when the intensity turns up for everybody else, are they going to be able to raise their games?
The biggest problem with this question is that the NBA regular season and the playoffs are sometimes 2 completely different things, where you can be a really good regular season team and not a good playoff team because you can get exposed. You watch players like I'm watching Amen Thompson for the Rockets right now. And you're like, man, this guy is really good. He can do so many things. What happens in the playoffs when teams can play off of him 10, 15 feet? Is it the same or is it different? And it just becomes a completely different animal.
Hang on, I'm just making a note to clip that so I can send it to the Rockets fans. Okay. And
Sure.
Okay.
I text Jackson about this all the time. Locked on Rockets.
And so you're right, because here's a good example. I think it was 2021. It was either 2021 or 2022. I'd have to look it up. The Utah Jazz that year, where the number 1 seed had the best point differential. And that's like a great counter argument to me to be like, Matt, they had the better resume. They had all these great metrics. Do you really think that they were the best teams? Then I would have answered no. This isn't like the proof is in the pudding, right? Because the pudding in the NBA regular season is entirely different from the pudding in the postseason. You're absolutely right on that point. I don't think you can legitimately argue that the Dallas Mavericks in 2007, who had been to Western Conference Finals, who had beaten the Spurs, who had beaten the Suns, who had consistent appearances and had just come off of making the NBA Finals with a 2-0 lead, I don't think you can succinctly answer that team was not built for postseason success. Can you, Nick?
Sure.
Well, they didn't win. How are they, like, you play this is going to tie into eventually your point about the Mavericks, is that you are the team that you are when you play in the moments that matter. And the team that played in the moments that matter in 2007 was a Mavericks team that wasn't better than that Warriors team. You play 7 times and you didn't beat them. Like, you beat them twice out of 7. That's just, you're not better than them.
And if I remember those games correctly, they did not feel like good wins. It was like, oh shit. How did the Mavericks win this?
Yeah. Yeah. And like, to me, that series is more about how matchups can manifest at the right time. Now, I think you touched on something really interesting there, Nick, because what you said was in the moment in that series. Because like that might be the compromise we could reach. The Minnesota Timberwolves were a much fucking better team than the Dallas Mavericks last year. They had a better defense throughout the entire regular season and in the playoffs. They had Anthony Edwards playing out of his mind, dropping 40 bombs. You had Rudy Gobert, the best rim protector in the NBA. You have Daniel Gafford, who we'll talk about later. Like Gafford, hang on, Gafford. Yeah, I gave you the room. Just give me a second. They were phenomenal. They had all these signature wins through. I get it, regular season. They also just knocked off the 2023 defending NBA champion Denver Nuggets in their house with the best player in the world, Nikola Jokic, on the floor.
Proud of them.
So I don't know I get it. I'm asking you if you, and you're going to be like, they won. That's it. Okay. If I told you couldn't use that argument, what's the argument that Dallas was better than Minnesota?
Half the arguments you made are comparing the Timberwolves as they were as a team the whole year to a Mavericks team that was 2 different teams throughout the whole year. You had the team at the beginning of the season, and then after they made the PJ Washington, Daniel Gafford trade, they were much better. They had the second best record in the NBA after they made those trades. So are we comparing to that team that they became or the team that they were before? Because that's the thing that you miss sometimes, is what a team becomes by the end of the season.
You remember, Matt, how frustrated you were in the last 25 games that the Mavericks were killing teams?
Yes.
You were so angry. You were mad online. You're like, none of these teams are trying. This is garbage. We can't take any of this seriously.
It's true.
And then they went to the finals.
I know. And so that's the thing here, right? Is the idea, and if you double down on anything, you get described as this person that won't admit that they're wrong. Sure. So like on a level,
especially if that is wrong,
I'll just ask you, Kirk, like, am I somebody that typically just doubles down on everything?
I don't think that's an accurate description. I think you like exploring all aspects of an argument.
Yes.
I don't think you double down near as much as you're like, let's just consider this from all angles. And where you get, where the daggers come for you is that's a very difficult thing to do in 140 characters.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Don't you get more than that now? But so, I've heard Matt admit he's wrong, but I've also seen Matt double down on many more things than that.
So this is the thing here, is that my argument, and I admit it, like, I'm totally okay with the fact of, I'm not like, if anybody disagrees with me, I'm not like, what are you talking about? Are you insane?
Right.
It's so obvious. Like, this is a galaxy brain take like most of mine, but I genuinely believe that March basketball is useless. How can you guys watch March basketball year over year and see that a third of the team league is tanking, a third of the team is injured, and a third of the team is resting for the playoffs, and think that success is legitimate? that's where we should evaluate how good a team is.
How is it any different from December basketball or January basketball? Like the only good
which
game
which one matters, Matt?
The only game I've seen that matters this year to me in the NBA landscape is Cleveland versus Oklahoma City. I've not learned a single thing about our own team. I'm just kind of lost in the darkness.
Right. So there's data, and I should have gotten this from Seth Partnow before the show, but there's data that suggests that basically December and January has the highest correlation historically to playoff success. Now, that doesn't mean that the Mavericks aren't real. Like Josh Bowe, I thought did an awesome job at Mavs Moneyball making this case. And Josh has returned to that time and time again to be like, nope, I said this, and then they made the finals, so I'm right. And I don't blame him, because if I did that, I would absolutely say the same fucking thing. But I don't know how you get there when you look at the series of events that unfolded. Like, I deal with the betting stuff. The Mavs hit an 800-1 parlay.
Okay.
They got the Clippers with Kawhi in and out, with Ty Lue inexplicably going away from post-ups with Zoo when he was killing him early. And then like an insane just like evaporation. But if you want to be like, that's the Clippers, I can't argue with you. Like, they were better than the Clippers. I'm willing to go there. OKC, given what we've gone here now, and like this is the big one for me. That series came down, and I said it before the series. I said, this is a shooting variance series. And it was so extreme in the Mavericks' favor. It was ungodly extreme, Nick. I put it in the rundown. Explain to me PJ Washington hitting corner threes in this series. Explain it to me.
Do we want to go off script here as to why he actually like the Mavs fan theory as to why PJ was
no, we're not going to go there. This show we have cursing, but we're not going there.
Okay, I'm just saying, if you're an inquisitive type, Google PJ Washington, Oklahoma City. There's there's games beyond the game.
I'm betting his overs every time they play OKC from now on.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. So Nick, explain this to me. Now, this happens. It's sports. I'm not saying that it's like it can't happen. It obviously does. But that's what happened, was that PJ Washington, who is a career sub 30% corner three shooter, shot 45% from three in that series from the corners on the very shots that the entire Thunder game plan was predicated upon.
He made 2 threes in game 5. He made 2 threes in game 6. That changed everything.
No.
6 points in 2 games?
No, because here's what happened. The Thunder had to shift back their approach because they basically
the Mavs made them adjust?
Like, yes, they did.
They did?
They did.
Because they had more options, because they were a better team in the end, because they had more to go to. They had more different looks to show. This is the part about being a better team. You make the other team adjust. That Warriors team in 2007 made the Mavericks adjust more times than the Mavericks had to make the Warriors adjust in that series. And that makes you a better team.
If Derek Lively hit 5 of 7 from 3-point range in a series, in a game, like I say he did in back-to-back games, like, are we really going to sit there and be like, well, they made them adjust? Or is it just like, no, Derek Lively for some reason turned into one of the best 3-point shooters in history?
And so the NBA team looked at that and said, well, he won't do it again. But they didn't say that. They went and said, all right, we're going to go guard him then, because we think that he can't do it
3 times in a row. It was like, that was like the crucial part of that series. And so they started sending less help. And then that's when Luka got loose, to his ever-ending credit. Because that's like really when he started getting healthier, right? Like, that's the most impressive thing about the Mavs run is like, and it does bother me when Mavs fans are like, because Luka led them, and I'm like,
he didn't even have that good of a playoffs. Yeah,
he was great in the Wolves series because of the matchup, and
not just unrivaled fury.
because of the matchup.
No, because he's
are we
awesome.
ever allowed to admit somebody was good?
And because he really hates Rudy Gobert. Like,
he does.
Yeah.
He really does.
We need a metric for that.
And here's the thing is, like, I'm actually very interested in this because there's basically in the league we have now is like there's guys that can get over screens and there's guys that can guard an ISO, and they are not the same. The Nuggets have this problem where Christian Brown is an awesome isolation defender, can't get over a screen. Jaden McDaniels, you put him on Kyrie Irving, by the time they did that late in the series, it was too late, but it worked.
Yeah.
But they were like, oh, we're putting our best defender on Jaden McDaniels. Now, the argument there might be like, yeah, you want to know why they were better? Because Jason Kidd outcoached Chris Finch. Do we think that's possible? Do we think that that's true, Kirk?
Yes. I think of the 2 series, you are more reasonably frustrated about Oklahoma City than Minnesota.
Okay.
Because Minnesota wasn't like there was how many what were I never felt like the Mavs were not in control in that series. Did Derek Lively miss a game? My brain is playing tricks with his neck injury. Do we remember that one?
I do not remember.
So he fell down, and Karl Towns, he fell, and like there was a knee to the back of the neck, and we're like, and anyone that was old looked at that and said, "I'm never walking again."
Yeah, he missed game 4. The
Missed
only one they lost.
So the only game they lost was the game where they missed a player. So who was a key component to. So that part speaks to me more because I understand what you're saying about matchups, but the Wolves are an example of a team like I referenced earlier that had no other gear to get to. They outlasted the Nuggets, and I think they were exhausted. That does have to play a factor into it. But the Mavericks made the Wolves look like they shouldn't have been there. Oklahoma City was a 6-4 series with some toss-up moments that happens. And it does happen. But I mentioned before the show that I had a take. And in 2011, the Dallas Mavericks beat the Los Angeles Lakers 4-0. And I'm pretty sure the margin in those 4 games was like less than 15 points. Mm-hmm. The Mavericks won on numerous, and I wouldn't have looked at that series and said, you know what? That's an outlier series. No, the Mavericks just took it to them and exploited the matchups just enough. If it's a 40-minute basketball game, a FIBA-style basketball game, I think we have some different results. But NBA games are so long. They're 48 minutes, and there's just more time where the best team almost always wins over a 7-game series with 48 minutes to play.
The Mavs beat the Lakers by like 40 in game 4 of that series, but
that's true.
The point still stands.
I feel like the first, I forgot.
It broke it open.
It's so awesome. The best part was like Kobe saying he wasn't worried at all. He was like laughing at the idea of being
the funnier. I still have the Funny or Die video saved in my bookmarks.
There are a couple of moments that kind of actually foretell the 3-point era before it happened with the war. Like everyone just kind of goes to the Warriors, the Magic and their win over the Cavaliers in their series. And then that one, because that series was entirely the Mavericks were like, we're just going to shoot threes. You can't guard us. So we're just going to shoot threes all day long. And the Lakers looked at it like, what is this wizardry? How does one shoot from out there? And like, that was like a real telling moment of that.
You know how many threes they made that whole series?
How many?
4 games, 49.
And Jason Terry probably had like 20 of them.
But here's the thing. At the time, it was like, oh my God, the Mavericks took 49 threes in a series.
They took 106 over 4 games.
Yeah. Like it's yeah.
Hard to derail, but that's where my head went.
You're right? And so a reasonable question be, you have the defending NBA champion Los Angeles Lakers, right? In the next year with a better record. My counter would be that I think we all kind of saw, like, or if you had paid attention to that Dallas team that year, like I was on them early. I was like, holy shit, the Mavs are a title contender. Yep. And so I don't necessarily think that by the time that series got there, I was like, I think the Lakers are in a little bit of trouble. Now, this isn't just about like, I'm all like, see, I was right. And if I'm wrong, then it was wrong, right? That's how it feels, I get, right? I was wrong. So, but here's the thing. I was so heavy on Dallas in that Western Conference Finals series. So heavy on them. And you're right about the context of, I think the best thing to come out of this, Nick, is actually that you said they were the better team in that series. That's like a great point, I think, to actually find like a mid ground here, where it's like, I don't think you would argue that over the course of the start of the NBA regular season, and even including all of the playoffs, that Dallas was like a step ahead. But in the 7 games that they played, for that moment in time, Dallas was a better team.
Then the Timberwolves or the Thunder?
I think both.
Yeah. The Thunder also were the healthiest team like in NBA history last year, weren't they? So you're comparing like a team that didn't have all their guys for the whole season, only got 29 games or something with Gafford and PJ.
Yeah.
From the trades. Like you're just comparing 2 different things. So if you look over the course of a season, there's so much noise and so many different things.
Can I ask you? Chet Holmgren goes down and OKC keeps rolling. Isaiah
Yeah, they're great.
Hartenstein goes down, they keep rolling. I'm trying to think who else is good this year. Memphis is still a top 4 seed despite everybody missing time. And like, this isn't a criticism of Dallas, because the way that Dallas, we'll get to them this year, because I'm a big believer in them. I actually think that both of you are too worried. Like, now you guys need to be like, everything's fine, and you're both like, uh-oh. But like, there are teams that can survive those injuries, and for whatever reason last year, like, they couldn't. And I am kind of like, look, your team defense and offense should be good enough to survive a variety of injuries, unless it's specifically what the Mavs are facing this year, which is Kyrie and Luka are their entire creation set. They have no other creators. How are they supposed to score without those guys? But like, that's where I start to go when it's like, well, the Mavs might have been better, but they were just hurt all year. And I'm like, okay, but also you lost on the time to be, did that happen? That's sports too. Right? Like, injuries happen, shooting variance happens, and that happens too.
But then you have to factor that in.
Okay. And I agree. This is and this was like a big part of like the whole MVP thing last year, is like Mavericks fans were livid about it. And I was like, look, if we're evaluating who is like the best player in the NBA, factoring in the Mavericks injuries, I think is really important. If we're talking about MVP, it's a resume award. I don't want to go down that road. We'll go down that road another time. The two things I think I was wrong about, and I still am kind of like, this is like a really interesting idea, but I do think I'm still kind of like, look, they got shooting variance versus the Thunder, a 6-4 series that flipped their way. Okay, that happens. That's sports. Then they got the matchup they needed, because the one team that they match up best with, I think, was the Wolves. And then they got to the finals and they got obliterated and embarrassed. Like, that was like, they were not like,
tough series.
And so like, that's a good question here, is like, were they a finals caliber team, Nick?
Yes,
because
absolutely.
They made it.
Yeah, and I think we'll have to I think everyone will have to begrudgingly respect the Celtics the further away we get from that title.
Mm-hmm. Great team.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think they're finals.
Great team who also, if we want to use Matt's argument, had the shooting variance on their side too. Where like they shot the ball really dang well. If I have to hear that PA announcer for the Celtics say 4-3 one more time, I'm like, I'm gonna punch someone.
And again, look what's happening now that their precious shooters aren't shooting at an unsustainable volume, because they're
so bad for them.
They have such great, like, all that rhythm that's very difficult to keep in rhythm with. The two things I think I was most wrong about were Gafford. So that was the point that Bo made, Kirk, that was probably the strongest, that he was like, he really bought in. Daniel Gafford can be an elite rim protector. What I struggled with was the points in the paint allowed by the Wizards consistently. And what I've kind of, and you saw this the other night in the Jokic matchup, and it's Jokic, I get it. Gafford can't guard, like, actually, if a guy can put a shoulder into him, he can bump him back and score through him. But if we're talking about guarding the traditional pick and roll set, which, I don't know, 60 to 70% of the NBA runs, Gafford is an elite rim protector, and that I was wrong about.
But Gafford just can't guard anywhere outside of 5 feet. Like, that's more where it lies with him. And I also think there's an argument to be made that the Mavericks caught Gafford on an upswing during a key point in his career, because as Nick and I have had to deal with this year, he, with the exception of last night's hilarious game against the Pelicans, he has played some of the worst basketball I've seen him play. So it's like, I sort of think that if there's an outlier argument, I sort of think the outlier Daniel Gafford argument is more interesting than PJ Washington, because he was important. I mean, he was a starter. And this year, I want to say their net rating with him as a starter was like negative 6.9 points. Like, it's rough when he's playing basketball for the Mavericks. So I don't know.
Oh, you know, the starting center for the Mavericks in the playoffs doesn't matter that much. I mean, 2022 showed us that the Dwight Powell memorial starting spot for the center. But I think that the Mavs also, one of their issues this year is that their offense can lead to good defense. You play sound offense, you don't turn the ball over that much, you score points, then you playing a set defense on the other end, or you're just running back and trying to play chase and doing all that. And I think the Mavs have really struggled with that this season. And Gafford really struggles with that when he's having to go all over the place. He's having to guard guys on the perimeter. That he's really struggled with.
The number one stat I wish I had was how teams defend in mid-transition, because I think this is Boston's problem. Boston's half-court defense is good. Boston's transition defense is good. But if you notice, they get killed whenever it's like they're scrambled a little bit. If they don't get to set up their exact sequence of how they want to match things to switch, they get cooked a little bit. And that, to me, I think is really interesting. The other thing I think I was really wrong about, not really wrong about, maybe wrong about, and Nick, I'm curious on yours on this one. Is Jason Kidd a good coach? Is Jason Kidd like a really great playoff coach? He's made a finals and a Western Conference Finals appearance.
I don't know how to evaluate coaches anymore. I infamously said after the Mavs lost 5 out of 6 that stretch at the end of the season last year, I was like, I think it's time to move on from the coach because
I was with you. Yeah.
The defense just had the same problems over and over again. They got new blood. All right, they got better defenders. All right, let's try and do something. And the defense just looks so bad. And then they turned to the best defense in the NBA, won a bunch of games at the end of the season, went to the finals, and took that momentum there. But yeah, I don't know. I think Jason Kidd does well in he does well in the player relationship aspect where he empowers these guys. Tim Hardaway Jr., game 2 against the Thunder. If he doesn't have 17 points in that game, the Mavs probably don't win that game, and they may not win that series. But like Jason Kidd had empowered him to, all right, we're not going to play you very much, but then when you do, you go out there and do your thing. That was a big thing. PJ Washington, he empowered him too. Keep shooting. You got the green light. Keep it up. And he did, and the match shooting variant turned it all around. Apparently the Mavs won that series being the far inferior team. And so now you look at it and you're like, all right, now what can Jason Kidd do? I don't think he's the Rick Carlisle. I'm going to elevate this random team that should win 30 games to 40 wins, or something like that. But I think that he has done well with the pieces he's been given. And when he's got a leader on the floor, I think he can be a good coach.
This is one more thing, and then I got some wrap up stuff. Kirk, is Lu Dort good
at basketball?
Yeah.
I think given how he is allowed to play, I think Tim Legler described it best, where he because Luka dishes out punishment, referees are fine with Dort giving it right back to him.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think what he does is play basketball. That's why I think he's a fraudulent playoff player. Like his collapse in the Thunder series was a big part. Like he was a brickfest in that series.
He was.
I think the lights were too bright for Lu Dort. And I expect him to, if the Thunder are going to elevate, my take is that at some point they will have to move on from him.
Okay. Because this is the big thing is the Mavericks fans are like, well, no, Lu Dort missed shots and he sucks. And I'm like, he's a 39% shooter last year. He's a 40% shooter this year.
Oh, he's crushed like that. The Mavericks play him on Friday, I think. And I'm sure he'll have like 25 points because
he was nails in that Celtics team earlier this season, but there's no way for him to acquit himself until he gets to the playoffs. And I do agree with you on that. Why are you guys worried about this year? Nick, like, it's fine. Like, Kyrie's back. Luka will be back by All-Star. You guys are going to rattle off 18 to 20.
Man, I'm worried about what I'm going to talk about for the next month. That's what I'm worried about. No, the team itself, that's one of the things that's the most frustrating thing about this run right now. We know this team is good. There's just, all right, we just got to wait to see it back all together again, right? Like we've seen what this team could be. That starting 5 is the best in the NBA when they're all together.
Yeah, we did. So Jokic missed last night's Rockets game. We didn't do a post-game show. I was like, I'm not going to do a post-game show when Jokic doesn't play. What's the point? Like, what's the point of doing this? There's no point in this. There's no point in content. Like, I have to have something.
We get paid for those.
So I will do them more. But anyway, our views are up like 150%. Thank you.
Let's go, Matt.
Kirk, you seem to be a little bit more critical, though. Like, you've been critical of, like, you're frustrated with coaching. You're frustrated with some of the players. You're frustrated with, like, the
Mavericks. So you mentioned earlier that Seth Partnow says December and January are two of the best postseason success indicators. If you were to pull up the Mavericks Jason Kidd record during December and January, it is well below 500. We're not talking approaching 500. We're talking 10 games under 500. I'm pretty sure of this because I did the math before the year. There's something about his sort of like I think he approaches the season like a book, where it's got different points and he wants the Mavericks to crescendo at the right time. And with a conference finals run and an NBA finals run, you have to admit the man has a point. But where I start to lose my mind is, Luka's going down, or Luka went down, Kyrie goes down, and they have lost double-digit leads in 4 games that they've lost here lately. If we go ahead and look at their schedule, I posted it in a social space you and I are in together today. The Mavericks up until All-Star break, if Luka doesn't come back, and honestly, man, I think you're overstating. I don't think Kyrie's going to really play regularly. Back stuff does not go away. We're getting fibbed to. We're getting massaged. I don't want to say we're getting lied to because that's not fair, but back stuff can flare up. I'm assuming Kyrie's going to play maybe half those games. I see 3 to 4 games where I would put the Mavericks as a clear favorite between now and All-Star break. They are 3 games over 500. At a certain point, you have to make the playoffs. Yes? They're what, 2 or 3
No,
games out of the 11 seed.
Jason Kidd literally 2 years ago said, "No, we'll worry about it. Like, when will you worry about not making the playoffs?" Jason Kidd said, "Oh, I'm not worried about making the playoffs. We'll worry about it when we don't make the playoffs." And then they didn't, and then he was worried.
They're going to make the playoffs, even if they're in the play-in tournament. There's actually this amazing scenario I have in the back of my mind that they wind up in the 9 in the 8-9. They win the 8-9 to get the 8 seed versus the Thunder.
Well, and then you have like to make it full circle. Then you have the Mavericks being on the other foot against the team that has 20 more wins than they do. Just like the Golden State Warriors back in 2007, the Mavericks had 25 more wins than the Warriors, and I think that's what we could be looking at.
And that's that could make for some really great stuff. Last question: what was I most wrong about in this whole discussion, Nick?
Can I tell them what you texted me?
Yes.
You said that the Mavs run was adorable, and that was the thing that you've said to me that has infuriated me.
Look at the little horsey. Look at the little horsey in the corner. That's you guys.
Could not stand that you said that.
The adorable little horsey. It was an adorable little run that then got snuffed by an actually great team. Kirk, what was I most wrong about?
I think Bam Adebayo is a big fraud. So the fact that you picked that team is something interesting to watch, when really what you were rooting for was the Lakers to lose and the Celtics to lose much more than you were the Heat, was the thing that I found the most. It's like Jimmy Butler is never the hero. He's just the less like, or he's the slightly more likable option.
Isn't he Katniss in the Hunger Games? He just outlasts everybody.
We'll see whether he can outlast Riles, who's rigging the game against him right now. That's Nick Angstad. You can catch him on Locked On NBA and Locked On Mavericks. You can catch Kirk Henderson on Blog Maverick and running all the great content at Mavs Moneyball. My thanks to both of them for coming to throw knives at me. We'll be back with another episode. We're trying to try a bunch of different stuff on this channel. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe button, because I need it. I desperately need your attention. So please help me. I'll see you guys next time. Thanks for joining us on Daggers.